Hey guys, and welcome to another video on setting up macros. I had made a video on this topic earlier in the year, but since there's been a lot of UI changes since then, I figured it needed a refresh. So in this video, I'm going to be covering just basic macro creation from JavaScript files that are stored on my Patreon or stored on my GitLab. And then also JSON files, MIDI quality of life setups, day setup, and then also callback macros. And then I'll probably go into some discussion with issues with better roles. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into this video. Alright, so as we can see, this is the GitLab, and you can see that this is a GW-MIDI file with a ending in a JavaScript. So I mean, if you were to download this file also off the Patreon, much like here how I have a divine smite.js file, and then on the other page, which is this one, this is just the JS file opened up within a text file, text editor. Within here, I mean, this is basically the same type of syntax and working as the same as within here. So opening these up, you don't need any type of fancy editor, or especially don't double click and try to run them. You'll get an error. You can even just open these files up with Notepad or any type of VS editor. And so all you really need to do is, as I said, open up the file, and then we're just going to go ahead and, select this, and you just copy. And then when you go into Foundry, you can just go in here, click New Macro, and then just paste in the data. And that's pretty much just setting up a normal macro within it. So that's how to handle those straight up JavaScript files that I provide for you. Typically you want to go ahead and put these into item macro. So as a case like this, so you're just going to go ahead and click on item macro, this dagger, pop it in here, hit save, and then go into the item details, and then you'll see a part down here where it says on use. You just toss in item macro. Or if you've already saved it to a macro out here in your macro directory, you just refer to it. I've noticed one catch where it doesn't particularly care for spaces, so maybe try to make it all one word like this, like Crusader's Mantle, where I have it like lowercase Crusader and then uppercase Mantle, just to kind of make things specifically worded. So if there's like somebody else that has a different macro within there, they're not going to step on each other's toes. So basically from here, yeah, you just pop that in, and it will go ahead and run the macro. So in this part, we're going to be covering JSON files. So what we're going to do is head over to our Patreon, and in here you can see that I've got a setup here where I'm giving you the JavaScript file if you want to implement it yourself, or you can elect the JSON method, which is just a file import. So what we want to do is just click on this and then save it to our hard drive. Now after you've successfully downloaded it, you don't need to open it, don't need to copy and paste anything like with the JavaScript file. These are two separate methods. You don't need them both. Pick one or the other. Don't do them both. So if you're going to go with the JSON file method, everything's already set up within this file. So within here, as I said, don't open it. You don't need to. But we're going to go ahead and go into Foundry, and then we're going to go over to the item directory. So when you're in the main, you just click on the icon over here. Your icon probably is going to look different than mine. I'm using a UI customization, the D&D 5e one. So in here, let's go to create item, and then we can just call this item whatever we want because we're going to be overwriting it. So we don't need to specify a particular name. So we're just going to call this item number 1. You can call it you know, 3, 4, 5, 6, you know, imported item, whatever. So it's going to create this item. We can just close out of it. Put number 1 up in there because you got to find it if you got a ton of items. If not, it'll be right there in the list. Anyway, so what we're going to do is, now that we can see our number 1 item, we're just going to right click on it, and then we'll have the option for importing. So let's just go in here, and then we're going to go ahead and choose source, and this should be the newest file in the directory, which is that, and then we're going to go ahead and just import it. Now our item's gone, then we're going to go and find Hail of Thorns, because that's the file that was imported. Now there's one issue with a particular module which is going to cause a problem if that fails, which is the item containers module. It actually is currently set to prevent item importing because the author believes that it's going to create a racing condition. So if it gives you a problem, just disable the module. It will let you import it without any problems. But yeah, that's basically the setup for that. You know, you can go into your character, you know, go in here, go to the spellbook, drag and drop it in. You're ready to rock. Okay, with basic MIDI quality of life setup, first we need to make sure that the module itself is set up correctly for this. So let's go ahead and hit our settings. Let's go into configure settings. You know, make sure that you got the module installed first. You're also going to need advanced macros installed. Day, which is the dynamic active effects using, or dynamic effects using active effects. And then of course, you know, we got good old MIDI down here. You know, pretty much set this up as you see fit. I would highly suggest taking some time to go through all these settings, make sure. In this, I'm basically just going to kind of glance through this. I'm not going to go through each individual settings. You know, that's something that you may want to do though, but I'm not going to cover that in this particular video. So under the workflow settings, this is actually really important. So what we want to do is make sure that add macro to call on use is checked, and you also want auto apply items effects to targets. So you need both of these two ones checked. Another handy side note is collapsing your item cards together. It's going to make things look a lot better. Make sure to enable these options where you condense item and damage rolls on the card as well as the card details. So within here we're going to go ahead and set up Great Weapon Master. And with the MIDI setup, we're going to go ahead and click in here, edit it, and then we're going to go under item macro. And then from this point, what we can do is go into GitLab, or either you're going to be copying a macro from my Patreon, but in this case, I've already got one written out. So we're just going to head over to my GitLab. I've got a Great Weapon Master for MIDI. So in here, I will always state some details for what this macro is meant for. So in this case, it's for MIDI on use, and as I covered a bit ago with checking that checkbox, that it's going to tell you that it's only for this. You cannot run this as a hotbar macro. It will actually error out on you if you attempt that. So we're just going to go in here, copy and paste this, go into there, toss that in there. Then under these item details, we're going to go ahead and put this to special. And then under here, we're going to set this as utility because we need to assign this so then we can get down here to the bottom. Without it, it's not going to show this and we can't gain access to the on use line. Or you can set it to other, doesn't really matter. Just you don't want it set to any of the attack ones or anything else, or because then it'll try to cause a roll. So in here, we're going to go ahead, since we stored an item macro, we're going to actually just type in item macro. Now, one thing to note with item macro is you're actually going to need to go in to the settings for it. Found here, and you're going to need to uncheck everything because if you have character sheet hooks, it's going to ignore certain calls that MIDI makes, and you're gonna not be able to successfully pull off things. Like, it just won't work with it. So we're gonna go ahead and type it here, or you can sort of as an external macro in here. I just find things self-contained is a lot better, so then I know if there's an issue, then it's all stored within here, and then you don't have to deal with permissions or anything. It's always just stored in the item. So in here, then close out of it, and now we can go ahead and just click on it, and I can see that he's swinging harder. And if we click on it again, it'll be swinging normally, and we can even see it on the token that it's placing a active effect on them. And yeah, that's pretty much it for it. Now, sometimes I will define a external macro, and all external macros, much like Hexblade's Curse, where the main macro itself, basically this particular front macro is going to be an on use, and then this external macro is going to be referenced within it. So then this one would be a secondary callback macro, which I actually make notation in here about it. So this one's going to go into that item macro, and then that one's going to go into... so from here, you're going to have your item. You know, you can open up the details. Went ahead and set it up as it should be. So it's one action, one target, 30 feet. And then also it's got X many uses, but I didn't bother for that. You can go ahead and set that up. So let's go ahead and grab our target, and then go ahead and use it. And then it went ahead and created the effect. And so you can see in day, the effect is here. I don't know what it double opens at the moment. It's probably some glitch. But yeah, you can go ahead and see the information there, and then when you deal your attack. That's right. I put that other macro on there. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and move them a little bit further away. What I had missed. And then now he's dealing damage. As you can see here, the Hexblade damage is dealt to that particular target. So yeah, I mean, that's the basic setup. Just kind of reiterate what I was talking about. So yeah, for this is just a 2 macro combo. The Hexblade goes into the item macro on the actual base, and then the other one is an external call to macro, which lives in your macro directory. So that should sum up this section. Alright, so now we're going to cover day portion of this video. For this, we'll use, let's do Tasha's Caustic Brew, or Castic Brew. From here, so we're going to go into day. I've got it set up in here already. And then for this effect, we're going to actually use a duration for this within the setup. By default, you're not going to have this information here. You're going to need a companion or add-on module for that. So if you go into your modules, you're going to need the one called Times Up in addition to the other timing ones, such as About Time and Simple Calendar, all the other dependencies. The actual primary day effects, in this case we're using item macro to execute, and we're passing the token, who is the base caster, to grab the variables from them. If you're unsure what type of variable you need to place for your macro that you're writing, or within that, usually I tend to provide them, or I'll make mention of what it is. Else you can head over to the GitLab page for day, and all of the ones that it supports are all mentioned here. So you can pass the target, pass their UUID if you want, the scene, item, spell level, item level, and more information that you can pass along if you want to refer to this information. So in some cases, macros may require what's called a callback macro. These macros are used with a advanced macros module, and all they simply do is pass data because player on player cannot alter each other, and players cannot also update any tokens they don't own, such as monsters. So if you wanted to set a particular token's HP to 0, but it's another person or a GM owned token, players cannot do that. They'll actually get a big red permission error upon doing that. And the way that we get around with that is we use callback macros, and they basically just at the end of it, they just pass data from one point to the other, and then mimic as if a GM actually did that themselves. So it's an awesome way how to fake permissions. But anyway, certain macros that I write may actually require this, and one in particular is the turn undead for Channel Divinity. And right here I've included a actor update macro. With this is a callback macro which runs in the background when you go ahead and execute it. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. So in here you can see this is the actor update macro, and pretty much what that turn undead macro is doing is it's providing two arguments that are being passed: the token ID and then the update, which is set that token's health to 0. What makes that possible is this checkbox that says execute macro as GM with this part checked. Let's take a sec to talk about meta roles. Unfortunately, at this time, I'm not going to support meta roles. It requires me to take a lot more time on releases. Also, certain calls that I make within particular macros, they just don't work. It's not compatible with it. Thanks for watching the video. Go ahead and like, subscribe. And if you find other people are talking about this particular subject, go ahead and share this video with them, because it may also cover topics that they themselves are struggling with when implementing such things. Or yourself, perhaps you're a particular macro author and you just want to kind of give the people accessing your scripts something to reference towards. I also want to thank my patrons. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for the support, and I will catch you guys in the next video.